All right.
Are we live yet?
Yeah, I think we're live. Hey, Sanjeev. How are you doing?
Awesome.
Uh,
All right. Hi, everyone. It's Sanjeev Goel here, and I have my friend Neeraj Jain. And we thought it would be a great idea to put together, just some updates in the psychedelic space. Because, I don't know how many of you are aware that we did a, big interview series, like a year and a half ago or so.
about a year and a half ago, yeah.
And I think it's lots of stuff is happening, and I thought let's just look at what the latest news is coming out of the field, and let's get on a little show and tell people what's happening. And we found a couple of things. We thought we'd talk to you about it today.
Yeah. So one of the ones that I thought was kind of interesting was this take-home microdose study that
Right.
Apex is doing.
Yeah, it's the microdose one, right? Yeah, it looks Apex Labs. Is that right?
Yeah. So part of the reason I found that interesting is when I first got involved in psychedelics, I was working with some guys at U of T
Yeah.
to get a microdosing study approved.
Right.
And at that time, Health Canada was making it very, very difficult.
Right.
Uh, first of all, I found it was great that this got approved, and secondly, it was a take-home study. So that was a big concern at the time, was people were so worried about the safety of it that they wouldn't
Right.
allow anyone to take it home.
Right. Yeah, and I think this is pretty impressive. So this company, it looks like they have a proprietary psilocybin molecule, GMP compliant, called, what is it called? Apex 52,
Right.
which is psilocybin. Um, do we have any sense of how much dose they were giving? Like, what is a microdose?
Yeah, well, this article didn't talk about it, but I mean, typically a microdose would be what, like about 10 to 25 milligrams of dried shrooms?
Yeah,
Well, it could
milligrams,
be,
exactly.
it could, actually could be as high as
100
100,
milligrams, maybe.
right?
Yeah, something like that. 100 milligrams. Um, yeah, this is Alex just came on from LinkedIn. Hey Alex, how are you? Writing a quick question here. Does an MD study have any EEG component? Um, I didn't know that they're doing one with EEGs. He's doing one with EEGs right now. I don't think they did. Um, this study doesn't look like they did any EEGs, right?
This study was really, they were just looking for, here was a safety, efficacy, and tolerability. Now, efficacy is a tougher one to measure, but my guess is because they're doing a follow-up with a larger number of participants, I think they were really just trying to prove that it was safe.
Yeah, because it's a phase 2B, right? So it looks like they've looked at 294 participants, and there were veterans with PTSD, and they just completed the collecting the data just last week. So they probably haven't even analyzed it yet. But it's just thought this is kind of an important study because we're looking at microdosing and seeing what the impact of that is. Anything else you want to talk about this one?
No, I mean, we don't have any results, but it is exciting that this is happening. Again, I'm just excited that Health Canada approved it. And, that's going to pave the way for a lot more to happen in the future.
Yeah. Oh, is this the one? This is a double blind. This was a double blind trial, I believe so.
Yeah.
Right.
Good.
And the dosing was 0.17 milligrams per kilogram, which worked out to about 12 milligrams of psilocybin.
Where do you see? I don't remember reading that. I'm wondering if you're confusing this with another study.
Oh, okay. Sorry, that's the next study. So no, let's scratch that. We don't actually know what the dosage here in this study was.
No, we don't know the dosage, and we don't know the results yet.
Okay.
So I think at this point we can just be happy that it got done and that a future study is in the works.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. What's the next one we want to talk about?
Well, let's talk about the one you're just talking about, the 0.17 milligrams of psilocybin per kilogram. And they were looking to see, I guess they were looking to see cognitive effects.
Yeah, is that the one of the creative? What creative effect happened? Let me just pull that.
Yeah. So what they found was that taking the psilocybin reduced task-specific cognitive ability,
mm-hmm.
but it increased creative cognitive abilities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which I think for anyone who's maybe tried some psychedelics makes sense.
Right.
It's sometimes hard to focus on solving a particular problem, but you can certainly come up with a lot of ideas.
Right. Yeah, and I think this does segue into our third study we're going to talk about, but this one, it said they looked after 7 days, so I'm not clear. Again, we have to look at the full study, but did they just give one dose? It was a double-blind, placebo-controlled study, parallel group design, but did they just give one dose and then after 7 days see what happened, or were they, tracking it over the whole 7 days? That's what I'm not really clear about in this study.
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't think it was clear about that, but they did seem to do another test after 7 days. It says they also found that novel ideas increased 7 days after the psilocybin exposure, and that brain imaging supported the behavioral changes in creativity.
Right.
So, this starts to point certainly to things, again, anecdotal stories that we hear about, that exposure to psilocybin can have all kinds of long-term effects, medium to long-term, right? I think in the same article they were talking about what they call the malleability of memories. I don't love that term. I kind of prefer rewriting your old stories, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Okay. I mean, we don't unfortunately have too much. Just for people, we're going to put the links again of these articles in for people. And this one we're just talking about. The second one is by Natasha Mason. It's in translational psychiatry, and it's called Spontaneous and Deliberate Cognition During and After Psilocybin Exposure. Just so people are aware of what we're referencing here, and I will put the link for that study in the notes. All right, and then let's talk about the third one, which I think was by far the most interesting study. And
the DMT.
How to talk about that one, the DMT study.
Yeah, again, for anyone who's had exposure to DMT, it's maybe not too surprising, but they found that what do they call it? Brain entropy, which is the number of connections possible within the neurons, increased massively when taking DMT. But yeah, let's talk about that, because they talk a lot about how our brain constructs reality, and then maybe we're not seeing the true nature of reality.
I don't know if we should even, maybe some of our viewers not even familiar with DMT and how does it compare to the other psychedelics. Maybe let's just maybe chat a few minutes about that. Did you want to? Or
sure, yeah.
Go ahead with that piece.
I mean, maybe you're the one to explain. I can talk a little bit about. I know a little bit more about 5-MeO-DMT.
Right. I mean, I can kind of just tell our viewers that basically DMT is considered one of the psychedelics. They all seem to work on the serotonin 5-HT2A receptor, and this study actually proved that the effects that people were experiencing was happening through stimulation of this receptor. We've known that, but this study kind of basically more really proved that point out. So the DMT has been used for thousands of years. It's a plant medicine. It's part of the ayahuasca, what makes ayahuasca work. So it's used in ceremonial and healing contexts, and it basically causes an intense a change in state of consciousness. People have visual imagery, some thoughts that change, and I think what they did here in the study was that they basically did IV DMT 20 milligrams, and they did an fMRI and EEG. So Alex did an EEG in this one, where they did that prior, during, and after the IV exposure. And when they're giving IV DMT, it's only lasting like 5 to 10 minutes. And so they were able to see clearly, before, during, and after, which I don't think there's other studies that have shown what's happened with psychedelic treatment, what exactly is happening during the actual exposure. Because, when you're doing something with, let's say, mushrooms or psilocybin or LSD, these are such long-acting treatments that you can't have somebody sitting in an fMRI machine for that long. So IV DMT is, I think, a pretty good way to kind of really see what's happening during the actual experience.
Yeah, and actually, because of its how short acting it is, it's actually considered one of the front runners for potential therapy down the road, because it's something you can actually go into an office and within an hour or two sort of complete a session.
Yeah. So I don't know, Alex is mentioning here the Cavanagh-Muller study where it was 500 milligrams bolus. This was only 20 milligrams of DMT. So I'm not sure if that was the same, if that's like such that'd be a massive difference in dose. This was, do you have the author on this one? Who was the author and what paper that was?
The DMT study?
Yeah.
Just trying to Christopher Timmerman. The human brain effects of DMT assessed via EEG-fMRI.
Okay, we will put that in the link as well. Christopher Timmerman just came out last week, March 2023, and PNAS is the journal name, and Robin Carhart Harris is one of the authors as well.
Yeah. So, I think again, this is something that people have talked about, how psychedelics can sort of temporarily create connections that maybe weren't there before, and allow us to see things in a new way, which, again, for therapy, it can be very valuable.
Yeah. I think what they basically found is that there was definitely confirmation. The fMRI showed changes in connectivity, what they called network disintegration, desegregation. Some of the areas where the 5-HT2A receptors showed increased activity. Some of it's a little bit above my my head about the different pathways in the brain, but I guess basically we're confirming here that the DMT is causing this temporary change in the brain function.
Yeah, the other thing this study suggests is that psychedelics may help the brain bypass or minimize the need for the hippocampus, right? And so that again, that could be part of how these medicines are useful.
Well, how do you mean? So bypass means that not allowing that part of the brain to become active? Isn't those what we call lower parts of the brain, limbic system and all that, really important in the effect of this type of molecule?
Yeah, but I guess maybe if you're dealing with a traumatic memory, or some kind of trauma in your past, being able to bypass the hippocampus allows you maybe, and you would know better than I think hippocampus is related to memory, right?
Yeah, it's like traumatic memories are being held in that. It's a learning area, but it's like,
yeah. So maybe somehow, I don't know, I'm not sure exactly how that would work, but that was something in this article that I read that they thought that was an interesting observation.
Just on, and Carmelia, who's watching with us, just asked the question: is DMT therapy available in Canada?
Well, nothing is legal yet. So again, we're not advising anyone.
We're not advising anybody to do this, just in case anybody's tracking that. But
there is research going on. I know that USONA in the US is quite bullish on DMT, and they're looking at how they can produce synthetic versions of that. So, hopefully,
we got somebody else that's also and we should talk about 5-MeO DMT just for a few minutes. Ashish Jain, hey Ashish, how are you? How do these brief experiences provided by psychedelics translate to long-term, long-lasting overall health and wellness? Can we comment to that?
That's a great question. And I think our comments are going to be based on really anecdotal evidence right now, and maybe a little bit of some clinical, right? Like there have been some studies, like the one that Robin did that came out. Robin Carhart Harris put out, was it last year?
Yeah, I remember we interviewed him about this study looking at depression and psilocybin, and actually compared it to SSRI, and they found it was just, if not anything, it was just equal to SSRIs.
That was an interesting study, right? Because on the face of it, it didn't look it looked like a failure because the chief result that they were looking for didn't materialize. But on so many other measures, we saw a reduction in depression and depressive related symptoms. I think that study should have actually received a lot more attention.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that it looks like these brief experiences are probably having a way of rewiring your brain temporarily. It's a temporary effect. Like, look, you can see that's happening in this DMT study where for that brief moment, or whatever time when the psychedelics having an effect, the brain is rewiring, or its connections are different. And I think what could possibly happen is that, if with proper integration and all that, we could maintain some of these connections that were not there before, which would then potentially change, help with any type of, increased wellness and mental health.
Yeah, it kind of performs or it can perform as an accelerated therapy, right? Like talk therapy, because you're able to access memories that you may need to deal with. You're able to create new connections. And according to that DMT study, maybe you're able to rewrite your story.
Right. Yep. I think there's more we're going to keep on top of this. I think we're going to kind of watch and see what's happening with this whole space and come back to you guys more often with updates in this field. Because again, it's such an interesting space, and finally we're getting a lot of more research that wasn't there before because, more money's flowing into this space as well.
Yeah. Well, and I bet you that COVID kind of slowed down some of the studies as well.
Yeah. Well, I didn't actually see an article on this, but I know that I saw it that in BC they were looking at legalizing psilocybin, and I know that a number of states as well this is happening, apart from Oregon when it's already legal. Yeah. I should say decriminalizing.
Decriminalizing, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope this was helpful, and we're going to see you again. We'll try to put everything in the show notes, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.